my name is Nicholas Montez, and you're watching my YouTube channel, Nicholas, the Teenage Movie Critic. I keep forgetting it's the Teenage Movie Critic. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, everybody. I'm so excited to have y'all back here together again. And in today's video, we're going to be doing a movie ranking, because Creed 3 came out this weekend. So that means I'm going to rank all 9 Rocky and Creed films from the worst to the best. Now, for me, this is easily one of the worst films, because it's like, sure, Rocky loses all his money, and there are some interesting stories for when he, becomes this mentor to this Tommy Gunn character. But if you really think about it, all of the mentor stuff that was done in Creed 1 and 2 was done right. With this film, it's kind of weird in a way. And it's like, you do all this street fight stuff, and it just doesn't turn out to be the best film. And it doesn't really set up to what the franchise is supposed to be. So this is easily one of the worst films in the franchise.
Let's go. Go. Woo. Go.
Now, for me, while a lot of people talk about this movie and say that it's so fun, I would actually say this is one of the only Rocky movies that I would say is probably one I rewatched the least. Mainly because there's just not a lot of stuff that really pops to me. I mean, don't get me wrong, I mean, obviously the death of Apollo Creed in this film is, of course, famous, which caused the idea of Creed 2 to be made. And I don't really know how you can, it's fun. Don't get me wrong, it's hella fun. But I don't know, it's just, the third act is crazy, as, he keeps getting punched in the face, and, it's wild, it's crazy, it's zany, it's weird, and it's just out there. But at the same time, it's you have to look at the basics of that, and it's how can this actually happen? So it kind of ruins the fun out of me for a bit, but I still do enjoy the movie as a whole. Alright, now we got Rocky 2, and I would say that this is a somewhat good sequel. It continues some of the stuff with Rocky and stuff, and of course the final fight is awesome. The big problem here is just feels like you're doing all these random situations of putting Adrian in a coma, giving her a child, and all that stuff. But it has some weird stuff where it just you're just doing all this stuff so you can get to the third act. And it's cool, I do like it, but I mean, kind of a waste of an opportunity. But there are some sequences in here I love, whether it's the third act, or the kids and Rocky running up the steps, and the training montage in here is also better. So, there's things to love in this film, but it's also kind of feels like a waste at some points. Now, this is a film, of all the Rocky films, this is one I honestly rewatched the most, where the action in the movie is just so amazing, as you have Rocky being this champion after defeating Apollo Creed, and you have him basically being the champion, taking out all these boxers, and basically just being the guy and showing the fame and legacy and all that stuff. And then you have this Mr. T's character coming in with Clubber Lang, and he is just awesome as this character, and he wins, he steals the show throughout all of it. And even the second film, it even brings in Hulk Hogan or something. Wait, not Hulk Hogan, the Hulk person. I thought that was great. And even the fact that you also start the friendship of Apollo Creed and Rocky Balboa in the film, and continues in the fourth film, which is the last time we see Apollo Creed. It starts a great friendship there. So, and then even the third act and the training montage in this film is still really good. And also you get to see a little more of you also get to see a bit of a different side of Rocky, where he actually is afraid for the first time. So, I actually really loved this film. I mean, it is really good, but it's not perfect. I think what probably drops it a little bit back is there's just better Rocky movies, and also it doesn't have the same feel. It doesn't feel like a great film. It just kind of feels like, oh, he's just throwing a lot of punches, but it also feels kind of crazy at the same time. So I like it for that. Now, this was a film that I was so excited for. First off, I mean, the way that it pays off from the first two Rocky films, from the first two Creed films, where you have the rematch between Ricky Conlon, as well as starting a friendship between Drago and Creed, I thought was great. But even just exploring Creed's character as this retired boxer who's now training the next generation of champions. But also you get to see Bianca's side and how she's doing with her music and stuff, and what's going on with her daughter, and that she wants to fight when she gets older. And then, of course, the big cherry on top of here is Jonathan Majors as not King the Conqueror. That's Aaron the Lost Quantumania. As you get to see him as this character of Damian Anderson, who has this very good backstory where he spent half of his life in a cell and watched someone else do his life for him. And now he's trying to get that back. And it's a very interesting villain storyline. And honestly, I just loved all of that. The boxing scenes in this are cinematic. They're great, especially that way it's inspired by anime. And even beyond that, the movie just had a great overall theater experience. Overall, this film was a great continuation of the Creed franchise. But at the same time, it does have some faults, though, Not the biggest fan of the way Damian kind of gets his way of getting into having that chance of being the champion. And also, the absence of Rocky Balboa is there, and when the mom dies, doesn't really pack any big emotions to me, because it's kind of a movie cliche that happens that I've seen a bunch of times. But overall, I think that the third film was great, and I loved this continuation of the Creed franchise. Now, for me, of the Rocky sequels, this is one that I just personally really loved. Where you saw this older version of Rocky, like the oldest one. This is where Sylvester Stallone was getting older. He was sort of being out of retirement. And basically the way that the story is, and how he's a retired boxer. He lives in his house alone in Philadelphia, and he now has this restaurant. He's kind of having a bad relationship with his son, and he also finds the little girl, Little Marie, but he's also dealing with the grief of with the death of Adrian, which I thought was actually an interesting story, where it's like, oh, Adrian died. That's pretty sad. But then when you have that last fight, it's honestly really cool. You get to see all the training montages and everything. And I think the training montage in here was actually pretty nice. And overall, it just had a nice vibe, but at the same time, it also had this very saddening emotion to it that I thought worked in the film, that felt very right. Now, I will say this, besides everything else that's great about the movie, the certain reason as to why he is having that last round doesn't really make sense. You don't care about the new guy that he's fighting. You just don't care. And so it's like, even though he loses at the end, I respect it because they both respect each other. But at the same time, it's like, there's not really a great reason as to why he's working with him. But overall, I thought this was another great sequel to the Rocky franchise. Now, for me, I thought this film was one of the best Rocky films and one of the best Creed films, because it really did, because of course it does some stuff that, one of my biggest problems with the first Creed is that it kind of copies some story beats of the first Rocky. But what makes that first film so great is that Adonis is such a different character from Rocky. And in this film, yeah, they do kind of do the same thing, where Adonis proposes to Bianca, and then they get a kid who happens to be deaf, but there's a casualty through that. So instead of Bianca getting in a coma, the tragedy is that their daughter is deaf. But I actually think it pays off in the third film. But as this movie goes, it finds new ways to continue. Like, first off, I love the way that they make the story of Rocky 4. And that was so silly. And make it such a very serious film. And makes that continuation of that story so serious, where when Ivan Drago lost that night, everything changed for him. He lost the respect. Everyone lost respect for him. And as, you know, when you move into the third act, like, you kind of feel bad for Drago as he's probably about to die or get beaten or just get killed like he killed Apollo Creed. And it was crazy to me, and I love the way they do it. And even then, I think the Dragos are probably the most threatening of our people here, mainly because he's the most threatening of all of our villains in the Rocky franchise. And because it's like every time you're on screen with him, it's like you feel a threat, like he could kill you. And even then, they even find new ways to develop the characters, whether it's Rocky, where he has that conclusion with going back to his son, which is the last time we see his character. But then they also find new ways to develop Creed and kind of like finding out, like, he doesn't, like, you can't just fight this guy just because he killed your dad, because you're just fighting out of vengeance. No, this is your fight because you did it. He didn't do it for you. He didn't do it for you. It's because he did it. He did it for him because this was his fight, the fight of his life. But even more than that, it was, and then even with Bianca, you get to learn more stuff about her. Little Duke gets some moments, and overall, it's just a great film, well acted. And then, of course, the boxing in the film is also great. So overall, I thought the film told a great story and did such a great job being a sequel to both Rocky 4, but also to the first Creed. Now, this was a film that I honestly just really loved. Of course, like I said with Creed 2, this film does kind of copy some story beats of the original Rocky. But what makes it so great is that Adonis is not Rocky. And it's fresh. His character is fresh and new, and he's different from Rocky. So, in a way, you can kind of still enjoy the film because the character is different and unique. As, you know, with Rocky, part of the reason why that story worked for him is because he was an underdog. He boxed because he sang and danced. And why does Creed want Rocky to train him? It's not because he can't sing and dance. It's because he was born a fighter. He's been fighting all his life. And so it makes sense in light of that, but also going back to him being the bastard son of the Creed family, he wants to make a name for himself. He doesn't just want to be remembered as Creed, because if he loses a fight, he's going to be remembered as the bad Creed. He's going to be known as the mistake for the Creed family. And I just thought that was, like, very interesting. And even when they do the cancer plot line, which sometimes, at first I was thinking, like, maybe that's a little too much in this film, but then I'm like, oh, it actually makes sense because it's like a metaphor for, it's like, Rocky's just, all of his friends are gone, and he's just waiting to die. But it's like, it's kind of like Creed, like, if you're gonna, like, you're just gonna, like, you gotta do this. You gotta keep going. And so Rocky's gotta keep going on and moving forward and living life. So I thought that was a great metaphor. But even then, you know, the acting in the film, the directing from I was about to say Michael B. Jordan. The acting from Ryan Coogler was great. The casting of Bianca, Adonis' girlfriend in the film, was also great. Overall, the film was a great sequel to Rocky, and also Sylvester Stallone's performance was also fantastic. Now, for me, when I first watched this movie, I was actually kind of blown away. Where it was such a very altruistic film where, you know, Sylvester Stallone wrote this, he directed this, and he acted in it. And it was just an indie film. It was an independent film. It wasn't meant to be a franchise like it was supposed to today. But it kicked off this franchise that we didn't know it was going to be this long, where we had this guy was an underdog, and he basically boxed because it's a hobby of his, but he also did it because he can't sing and dance. And as you're going through the date with Adrian, and you're going through all this talk, it's like you like his character. Like, even though he's saying, hey, yo, Adrian, like, you like his character. You understand, like, you understand everything he's saying. And even when he gets challenged to do the boxing match with Apollo, you like that, as he's starting to get challenged. And even when Apollo realizes, like, when he sees him beating the meat bags on the meat hooks on TV, like, he starts to get worried. And I think that this is probably one of the best. I think that's why I think it's one of the best sports movies, because of that. An underdog that wants to live up to a challenge, and I just love that. Beyond that, it's also kind of a love story, so that's also cool. So I thought that was I just thought it's a great description of a character. I just thought it was overall really, really good. So that's my ranking of all the Rocky and Creed films. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All my social media stuff is in the chat section over there. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.